Big Ten football. We're coinciding this with the NFC North because it just fits. Last season, obviously, Oregon and a bunch of other Pac-12 teams made their way into the Big Ten, and Oregon took the crown this past season. But then they ran into, as one of my favorite sports announcers, Joe Klatt says, the Death Star supernova that was the Ohio State Buckeyes. And in the playoff, it was a beatdown. This season, it looks to be like Penn State's getting a lot of the attention right now because they're bringing everybody back. It's kind of been that pattern the past few years with Big Ten teams that have won the national championship. It was the same with Michigan 2 years ago. They brought a lot of their pieces back, and they won the Natty. Ohio State able to get NIL deals for a lot of their current players to keep them in college, keep a lot of that experience on the field, and they win a national championship. It kind of feels the same way with Penn State, bringing a lot of players back. They're bringing their quarterback Drew Aller back, and the biggest pickup I think was defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles, who was the former Ohio State defensive coordinator. So Penn State's getting a lot of the attention right now as maybe the best team in the country. What do you feel like with them, and what do you think about the Big Ten as a whole?
So, I mean, they have been known disappointments over several years. Penn State has. They did make it to the, what do you call it? Do you call it Final Four now? Now it's a playoff. I don't even know.
Semifinals.
Semifinals, yeah. They did make it that far, but they beat they beat SMU in that first game, and then I can't remember who they. Mine's blanking.
It was Notre Dame that they lost to.
Yeah, they lost to Notre Dame. Yeah. So, rightfully so. I think rightfully so. I mean, the early AP poll came out today. They're number 2, and Ohio State's 3. I think Oregon's 7, I believe. But none of these rankings matter until the games are played, in my opinion. That's why I love college football, but I rarely ever think about it or care about it in the off season. It's just because, with rankings, it just once the games start, that's when things you kind of forget who left and who came in, who's coming in. A little different now with the transfer portal. You do pay a little more attention to that, but I just wait till the games are played. And but I do think it's true. Ohio State's the defending champions, but with Penn State retaining a lot of their key figures, I think they probably deserve the number 2 spot over Ohio State, but we'll just wait till the games are played to declare who's actually better.
Yeah, and I think one team that is, for me, one to really watch for this season is Illinois, because they could end up being the Indiana of last year. Indiana had a pretty favorable schedule. Illinois has a favorable schedule. They don't have to play Oregon, Penn State, or Michigan coming into this year, and their game against Ohio State is at home. So they're set up pretty well for a really good season. Bringing back a lot of their O-line, bringing back Luke Altmaier at QB. So I think this could be a really fun year for Illinois, who had a pretty good season last year. They were just in a tough conference here in the Big Ten that had a lot of heavy hitters at the top. What are maybe some of you?
As Indiana's you just mentioned, they're very intriguing just because was last year a fluke, or was it
right?
Will this be things to come? I mean, you got to love the transfer quarterback they got, Fernando Mendoza from Cal. I like that's what Kurt Cignetti, their coach, is looking for. He got Curtis Rourke the year before, experienced guy.
Right.
You're not taking a project, you're taking an experienced guy to come in and hopefully keep this team. I guess now it's keep this team strong. For Rourke, it was let's go to new levels, bring this team to new levels. So I love that transfer. But yeah, they're a wild card because while last year was a fantastic season, no doubt about it, it was laid out beautifully for them. Like, I mean, and they deserved it. They deserved it after the years in the Big Ten East when that was so unfairly divided. But yeah, it was laid out beautifully for them, where they're only tough. Like, it was beautiful to go 11-1 because they only played 4 road games. One of them was at Ohio State, so that was their guaranteed loss. But they played none of the middle of the pack teams on the road. They avoided like Oregon, Penn State. avoid Oregon and Penn State. Like they never had to go to Iowa or Minnesota or like the
Right.
middle of the road teams. I feel like that would have been a great test to go to middle pack teams and beat them on the road. They will have to do that this year. This year they do avoid Ohio State, but they do have to go to Oregon. That's a tough game, and Penn State and Iowa. That Iowa game is going to be interesting. But you mentioned Illinois. That September 20th, Week 4 game, Illinois at Indiana. That's one of the best games in the Big Ten this year. I feel like
Yeah.
that could set the direction for both teams depending on the outcome of that game.
Yeah, you mentioned Iowa. They get both Oregon and Penn State at home, and Kinnick is a really tough place to play in. Not easy for any team. I think they will get one of those. One of those two teams are gonna fall at Iowa. Some of the best games I'm seeing on the slate for the Big Ten. A couple of early non-conference games. Obviously, the Texas at Ohio State game in the non-conference is
Who cares about that?
an
One
incredible.
versus. I guess that is one downside of the AP poll. It's not going to be 1 versus 2. It'll be 1 versus 3.
Yeah, but we're going to get to see Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns take on the defending champs and the Ohio State Buckeyes. So that'll be a really fun game to get the season going. Michigan at Oklahoma is another one. Kind of see Bryce Underwood if he's going to end up taking that starting job. It's not a done deal yet, but he has been getting a lot of the snaps since the other quarterback's been down with an injury, and that he's probably one of the biggest, most highly touted freshmen coming into this season, especially for this conference. So to see him go on the road at Oklahoma, that'll be a fun one to watch. Looking down the list, you mentioned the Illinois at Indiana game, Oregon at Penn State. That's a huge one on September 27th.
There's 3 really good games on that day. Oregon at Penn State's the best, but I like USC at Illinois. We're kind of waiting for USC to take that jump, and I think their schedule is pretty favorable up to that point. So that could be, if Illinois is able to get by Indiana, that's a big if. That could be a really good game too. And then Indiana at Iowa, I mentioned that game earlier, but that should also be a fantastic game, assuming both teams are at the level that they are currently ranked.
Yeah. And then we got Michigan at USC on October 11th. And by that point, Michigan will have already played at Oklahoma and Nebraska. They could be 5-0 and in the top 10, or they could be 3-2 and basically flailing and it'd be another season, much like last year. But USC will have just visited Illinois and could be flailing themselves. And we don't know what it's going to be like for USC. Both those teams are a bit wild card. Obviously, November 1st, Penn State at Ohio State is always a good one. Ohio State usually prevails because it's just one of those, really the one game during the regular season that Franklin can't get for his squad. And then another Penn State one, Indiana at Penn State, November 8th. Whether Penn State's coming off a win or a loss in Columbus, they will desperately need to move on and avoid a hangover from that game because IU's going to be coming to town.
They will, but Indiana's going to have to show something that they've never done before, and that's go into a hostile environment and look like they did at home last year, which they got off to a decent start against Ohio State last year, but then Ohio State kind of blew the doors open, and then Notre Dame, that was pretty ugly too. So yeah, on paper it should be a good game, but I think it's going to depend on what happens in that week before with Penn State, Ohio State.
Yep.
And then Ohio State, Michigan's obviously the other big one.
Well, yeah, obviously we're going to end with that one. Yeah. And even with the 12-team college football playoff format, it's still the biggest rivalry, and it can even now if you lose it, obviously we saw what Ohio State was able to do coming off a loss in that game and winning the championship, but it's always going to be the biggest game. It's the game, obviously. So a fun one to always end the season with for the Big Ten. Any last thoughts on the Big Ten as we head into the 2025 season?
Not really. I haven't mentioned Nico, whatever his last name is. How do you say that?
Iamaleava.
Yeah. UCLA could make some noise. I'm not going to say they're going to contend, but that is an interesting pickup. If he displays the talent that he did at Tennessee at UCLA, they will be a tough out. I have Purdue versus Rutgers in the championship. What about you?
I think
It's
I think
going
it'll
to
be
be.
Penn State and either Ohio State or Oregon. It's going to be one of those three. I feel like with this run with these coaches and these programs, it's just going to be like that for the next few years, even decade at least. So
I do agree, though, that Illinois has a chance due to their schedule.
yeah.
Their difference between them and Indiana last year was that Illinois actually is ranked high. Indiana kind of came out of nowhere. But you're right, schedule does matter if you're going to win the title, and Illinois does have a favorable schedule.